Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you to our panelists for joining us today, and thank you guys who have chosen to listen to this. This is the next episode, if you were, of Hit the Mark with Mark. Today's topic is going to be around how you land your dream job out of college, which I know many of our undergraduate members sooner rather than later are going to be faced with that challenge. And so we wanted to talk to a few folks that have recently gone through that and pick their brains and get some advice. Again, probably won't solve all your challenges, but at least hopefully it will give you some thoughts, things to consider. So joining me today on our panel are three fellow brothers and members. First is Bryce Hobbs, who's a graduate of our Washington Alpha chapter. He's also a former District 6 Archon and is currently an innovation engineer at Cobra Puma Golf, which sounds like a great job working for a golf industry. So welcome, Bryce. Thank you for joining us. We also have Alex Vickery Holland, who's currently a chapter services consultant here at headquarters, and Zachary Herdy, who's also a chapter services consultant and gracing us with some of their time right out of school. So just to set the context here a little bit, certainly, from my perspective, I graduated for the first time quite some time ago. I won't date myself, but certainly from when I graduated, the world has changed quite a bit. I mean, we have very different economic realities than we have now. I actually graduated during a bit of a downturn, so I like to regale folks with the tale of the 52 rejection letters I got that I then posted on my wall as they came in my dorm room, actually the room in the house that I was staying in, until I finally landed the role that I wanted. That was quite a brutal time. I think many of you are graduating into an economy that's certainly stronger than that. There were different global realities. When I graduated, we were still very much focused on the United States, and the domestic market was by far the strongest. Now we face global competition and challenges from around the world. And similarly, from a competitive environment, historically, when I graduated from Virginia Tech. Most of my job market primarily was in the Washington, D.C. metro area, or Charlotte, somewhere around the eastern seaboard. Now I'm not only competing nationally, but I would also be competing, all of you are going to be competing on a global basis with folks in India and Europe and Australia and all over the place. And so it's a very different world. Again, not to date myself, but there was no social media, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. So again, very different environment, 25, 30 years ago when I was going through my first set of job interviews. So given that, we wanted to talk to some of the young men that are on this call with me who have recently conducted a successful job search. All three of these guys have obviously landed quite well, and try to get some of their wisdom of what worked for them and maybe some of the things that didn't, some pitfalls to avoid as we go through. The reality is the job search process is a challenge in and of itself. And actually, I look at it whenever I'm transitioning, even now, from one role to another. It is a full-time job in and of itself just to look for a job, especially when you have so many other things to worry about, right? As an undergraduate, you still got to maintain your grades. You've got those pesky classes you still have to attend, finals you have to deal with, friends, family, extracurricular activities, not to mention what you're doing with Phi Kappa Psi. And so there's a lot on your plate to the modern undergraduate. Plus, now you got to actually go out and seek gainful employment. So as I said, our plan is to introduce you to a few things to consider to set yourself up for success and to hopefully assist others as you go through the process. So again, thank you, each of you, for joining us today. And why don't we jump right into it? So I've got a few questions that I hopefully will spur some dialogue. I'll direct each question to one of you gentlemen, but certainly if one of your other ones to whom I did not direct it has a subsequent response or wants to augment the comment, feel free to jump on in. So with that, Bryce, let me start with you. So thinking back to when you were an undergraduate and started to plan your career strategy, what were some of the bumps in the road that you encountered, and what would you tell your younger self now, if you could, in order to avoid some of those bumps in the road?
Yeah, sure. So I think everything that you said was very accurate, and thinking back to when I was an undergraduate, I had a lot of friends, a number of them that were going to pursue master's degrees and go to grad school. And some of them, some of the other ones had actually already committed to a job and were lucky enough to have that to look forward to after graduating. I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to do grad school or look for a job. So I finally settled down on saying, okay, I'll work for a couple of years in the industry and see how that goes, and then reevaluate grad school after that. So I'm in my third year of the job here, but during the job hunt, the application process, and all those career fairs were not proving successful. So, getting those leads going wasn't really working, even though I was putting in my best effort, and it was really frustrating. I thought something was wrong with my resume or something was wrong with my personality. And so, I got, very down and kind of upset and disappointed with myself. But looking back, I just tell myself that it's a really hard process, especially during school. You got to stick with it, and you got to believe in yourself and stay positive. And tracking the jobs that you apply for when you have so many really helps too. The application date, things like when do you want to follow up a week later, making sure you stay on top of it is really the most important thing you can do.
Got it. Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. I think both of those are certainly wisdom that I learned from the hard way as well, in terms of staying positive and having a systematic approach to how you go after this is a huge advantage. Zach, from your perspective, what was the most nerve-wracking part of your career search process when you were going through the exercise?
Sure. I think the one thing that concerned me the most is that I wasn't fully certain what I wanted to do out of college. And even currently, even moving into the next role, whatever that might be, I still don't fully know what I may or may not want to do. So looking back on that, it was always a concern because the future can always seem, far away, distant, and you might not always know what you want to do. But just being on that journey has, been exciting in itself because as long as you're still following your passion, especially working here at FiSci for me, I've known it's given me the skills moving forward that I may not know what I want to do next, but I feel confident that leading into that, just the things I'm currently doing, being confident in myself and those things I'm doing will lead me into something that I'm passionate about, something I'll probably do well in, especially something I can use my skills in. So looking back, it's always more concerning not knowing what you're going to do, but it's always worked out in the end. And I feel that that's a similar story to a lot of what our members feel as well.
Just out of curiosity, to follow up on that, what are a couple of skills that you feel you're gaining working here, which, as I tell people all the time, and I'm sure you've heard me say, none of us are going to retire from our current roles, but like not knowing what you want to do coming out, you said you're developing some skills that you feel will be applicable regardless of what you go do next. What are like one or two just quick examples of those skills that you're thinking about?
Sure. So when I first joined working for FiSci, my thought that I had in my idea that I wanted to go into higher education. And so step one, it was a great process where I'd get this experience here at FiCap learn some techniques, get those experiences under my belt, especially something that I could put under my resume as well, and then take that next step, like Bryce said, to graduate school. But working in chapter services, working with consultants, it's really kind of changed my idea. And so it's really solidified. I graduated with a business degree. And so working in the chapter services department has, solidified my concept that I really like the business side of things, and working consulting and helping chapters improve and really taking them to the next level. So just this process as a whole has helped change my mindset and made me more confident in pursuing down the road, continuing in business as well.
Great. No, that's awesome. I thank you for sharing. And then, so Alex, kind of along similar lines, as you were going through it, we'd love to get your perspective. And similarly, kind of what Zach touched upon, for undergraduates who feel like they're stuck, they're not quite sure what they want to do, don't quite have a direction. From your personal experience, do you have any suggestions or guidance or learnings to share?
Yeah, I would say that I do. One of the reasons we joined the fraternity is that we want a support system. We want a group of people around us who are going to help us through anything. And so if that's turning towards your undergraduate brothers, your local alumni, even us here at headquarters to say, hey, these are some things I'm interested in, that's kind of a good first step. Also, your university or college is probably going to have a career services office. Those people really do have a good head on their shoulders, and then their jobs are to make sure that undergraduates know the kind of steps getting into them. So definitely utilizing all the resources available to you as an undergraduate, if you are kind of confused or want more direction, would be really beneficial, I think. And then again, utilizing the FISI network that you have, if that's on LinkedIn or if that's just through the alumni that you know. A lot of my undergraduate brothers at Oregon State, they were able to get jobs and internships and gainful employment, like you were saying, Mark, just through our local alumni base, which is a really good thing for them.
Yep. No, I think that's great advice. I tell that to everybody. And that's a skill set. Networking is a great skill that you should start early and often and never give up on it. You should be networking till the day you retire, maybe even after that, because it's a huge skill set. Bryce, similar question, I guess. You've got a little bit of a unique background because as an undergraduate, you served as an Archon for our District 6. So I'm curious, what skills did you pick up from that might have helped you navigate your first job search? And then certainly if you want to add on to anything that Zach and Alex have talked about in terms of advice for undergraduates as they're going through the process, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So something that I guess you don't really think about that frequently as a member of the organization is the people outside looking in. Not every human resource or employer person is going to know what an Archon is or what a GP is or what it means to be in a leadership role in your fraternity, let alone even what FISI is. So, Archon is a very unfamiliar term to them, and it actually ended up working out great because most of them would say, oh, hey, like, what's this? Do you mind telling me about that? And so it'd be a great segue and it would lead right into saying, let me talk about my leadership experience. And it was a great excuse for me to just explain, how I was involved in the national fraternity, how I was able to travel and, meet all these different people and different organizations and chapters within our organization, and then ultimately give back to a fraternity that's given me so much and become such a big part of my life. And, it's something that's foreign to a lot of those people. And if you're able to tell that narrative and tell that story well, human resources people really appreciate that. And it's a really attractive thing, I think, that they look for.
Yep, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that's another one. I was just kind of summarizing, take some notes so I can summarize at the end. But I think you hit on another great one, which is use of common language, right? So the average person has no idea what Phi Kappa Psi is, much less, even if they were Greek in college, much less what an Archon is, right? So using common language to more describe what you did in that type of leadership role, I would agree, would probably be very powerful.
Right.
Do that. So that makes total sense.
I tried to make sure that I left Archon specifically as that name off of the resume, and I explained it more as like a National Executive Council member, and that's something that everyone understands. And then they actually asked what Archon meant because it was on my email signature. It's just I left it there while I was serving, so it's just funny.
That's great. I think that's fantastic. Zach, you chose to serve as a consultant over the last year. What interested you in that role? And again, kind of similar to what you were talking about earlier, how does that relate to your job search and maybe how others should frame their job search coming out of college? Because again, not everybody will be a consultant for FISI, so we're lucky to have you and we're happy to have you here. But what drove that decision, and what can you glean from that might help some of our other undergraduates?
Sure. So I became interested in because throughout my 4 years as an undergraduate, we had a consultant come through each year as well. And as a chapter leader, we would meet with the consultant, talk about our responsibilities, but I would also use that time to ask questions about the position and learn more about that. And so that was really when it kind of piqued my interest for what we were doing at Phi Kappa Psi nationally and kind of what I could gain out of that position. So that's what first interested me in applying for the job. And so after I received the position, and I've been on the road for a year and a half now, it's been an awesome opportunity. The best thing I've gotten out of it is really learning more about myself. As I mentioned, being on the road has changed my perspective, number one, of what I want to do continuing forward in my career. But even more than that, I've learned more about what my personal interests are, kind of diving more into how I am personally and how I work with different people around the country. It's been just an awesome opportunity and learning more about myself. Another great thing about the position too is, as Bryce kind of mentioned, doing this, there's a lot of conversation about how translatable the skills you learn here at FISI are to what your next position are. So like Bryce said, right, the people might not understand what the term Archon is, but as a national council member, that's a more understood term. And it's really great to have that experience and how you can carry it over to what your next position is. So I've been incredibly grateful for what I've learned here at FISI, because going into it, you don't really expect it. But once you look back, you realize, wow, I've actually left with a lot more than I thought I would receive at the beginning.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Again, I kind of summarized that whole commentary around setting yourself on a learning path and maybe not trying to achieve the perfect job, which is wonderful, but I'm not sure there is such a thing. But as you first step out of college, put yourself in a role where you can learn quickly, not only about yourself, but also what you like and don't like. So the next job and the one after that continues to get closer and closer to what you view as your perfect job, so to speak. So that makes total sense. Alex, I know a lot of our undergraduates, as they're going through the process, are having this kind of yin and yang debate between getting a job and going to graduate school. I know you went through a very extensive graduate school search before you ended up stepping into the consultant role. So I'm just curious, how did you end up deciding between pursuing your graduate degree at that time? I assume you're still going to pursue it at some point, versus stepping into a job, taking a job role for a little while and then going to graduate school. How did you navigate that challenge? Because I'm sure myself included went through that, and it was a tough internal discussion to kind of arrive at a spot. So tell us a little bit about your story there.
Yeah, so kind of like Bryce and Zach were talking about earlier, I had that discussion with myself. Do I want to go to graduate school first, or do I want to go get a couple years of experience? And through kind of the interview process, interviewing for assistantships, working on campuses, it became apparent that, yeah, I might have had a really good resume coming out of college, but maybe there are other people who have more experience than me in certain areas, and that was able to give them a higher leg up. And you know, they were not only were they more qualified or were they smarter than I was, but they had just a much more well-rounded experience kind of going into that higher education master's degree program. So with that being said, it was like, that sounds fantastic, because if I want to really serve students in the way that I do want to do, or for our undergraduates, if you want to be able to go out and make the impact in other people's lives or in the world that you want to do, sometimes it's not a bad thing to take a year, 2 years, 3 years to get some real life experience before you go back into the classroom. And so that was one of the things I had to kind of tackle with. Like you said, it was a difficult conversation, but I'm super thankful that I chose to move out to Indy and work here. And I think that's making a big difference for me.
Well, we're happy you made that decision as well. So I'm glad to have you on board. So thank you. So with that, Bryce, maybe just to kind of bring us home here, or, you know, and anybody can chime in, but I'll start with you, Bryce. You know, what actions should if you could give advice to some of our undergraduate members, you know, you're just a few years removed from sitting in the chair that our juniors and seniors were in. You know, what action should they take to ensure that they end up in a position where they'll flourish?
Right, sure, Mark. So I think, like everyone's been saying, you really got to make sure that if your first job isn't something that you really want to do, it's something that's on the career path and the right trajectory to something that you're really going to enjoy. You know, I heard this a lot going through the fraternity and mentors with even at ALA, the American Leadership Association, or Academy, American Leadership Academy. Just that, you know, you got to do something that you love, because if you're doing something you love, you'll never work another day in your life. And that's something that really didn't set in until I thought about that and how that applied to myself. So what could I see myself doing that wasn't going to be difficult, wasn't going to be a drag, and something that just is enjoyable. And for me, that was combining an engineering passion with a hobby of golf. And I was very lucky to get that right out of college, and not everyone is. And it was something where I wanted to end up here at some point, and I was willing and prepared to work my way towards it. Getting a couple of years of experience in the field and then becoming more attractive. Those are the things that you need to work on. You're already doing it with your classes in school, and then you just need to put it together with a little bit of job experience and show that you're a hard worker and work towards your goal. And you just need to sit down and figure out what that is for you. And that's the most sound advice I think I could give someone.
Great, thank you. Zach, any parting words of wisdom for young men who are about to enter the workforce?
Sure. I'll use this opportunity for a personal plug real quick. I can't recommend more to at least looking into applying to be a consultant here at FISI. It is an incredible opportunity. Again, I go around the country and tell people to at least look into it. Your peers, they don't get an experience like this at all. You get to travel the country, you get to network with so many different people. It's a great opportunity to build your experience in your resume. So again, I highly recommend for all FISIs watching this to look into applying to be a consultant with us.
Great, and I was going to do a plug later as well, so thank you. You saved me the trouble. So if anyone is interested, we are taking applications. Feel free to reach out to any of our consultants, to me, Michael Moore, and anybody here at headquarters. Happy to have that discussion. We're always looking for a few great men. Alex, any parting thoughts from your perspective?
Other than wishing all of our undergrads the best of luck, and for them just to know that we are always here to serve them. If they need anything from us, just to reach out.
Great, thank you. So as we're summing it up here, I was taking a few notes. So just a few of the key takeaways. Again, certainly not an exhaustive list, but for those of you who are listening, I think going through the process, one of the things that was heard was stay positive and just don't give up, keep trying. Second item was, as you build out your resume, and this probably holds true for your LinkedIn profile and your social media profiles as well, use common language. So if there's a very unique title or job description that's there, either put it in common language or define it, one or the other. Put yourself on a path. Don't try to get the perfect job right out of school. Put yourself on a path to doing something that you love and that you will learn from. There's another theme that I heard. Network. That's another one, and I'm a huge advocate of that. And then finally, just leverage the resources you have around you, both within your university, within your friends, certainly within the fraternity. Leverage your resources to try to drive for the best outcome possible. So I thank all of you for joining us today and listening to this. Thank you very much to our three panelists. I appreciate you guys participating. I'm sure our folks will find it valuable. And everybody have a great day.
Thanks, Mark.